Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to this Steam session at Camp at Home 2. I've done that right every other time apart from this one, but that's fine. This is our last Steam session of the weekend, so I'm glad to introduce Rob, who joins us from Bloodhound, and I'll now pass over to him. Rob, are you there?
I am. Good afternoon, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Durham Scouts, and those who are joining not just from Durham in the UK, but maybe even, of course, Durham in the US of A, and even further afield. My name's Rob Bennett. I'm part of the Bloodhound education team, and one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about is, as a young child growing up, was scouting. I learned so much from being in the Cubs and being in the Scouts, and it prepared me for so many different things that I ended up doing in my life. And yes, I will be making reference to those things as we go through. Hopefully you know some of those. So why am I on this session? To talk to you about an extraordinary thing. It's a car. It's a bit like a jet boat. It's a bit like a rocket. It's a land speed record car called Bloodhound. Now, I'm hoping that I'm going to get some questions from all you people out there, and I hope you think up some great questions. Over the years, I've had many fantastic questions, but I've not had any that I'm particularly aware of that have come from Scouts. So I'm hoping that they're going to be very cool questions. So what do you need in order to set a land speed record? Which I think is a really important question to understand. Well, firstly, you need a set of rules. Like everything in life, you need a set of rules. And the rules for a land speed record and setting a land speed record are really, really simple, because the land speed record has been around for a very, very long time. Basically, as long as people have been driving around in these things we call cars, a horseless carriage. Yes, a horseless carriage is a car. It's just a shortened word for the same thing. Carriage without a horse. So in the 1700s this started, and as it developed, by 1898 the world's first land speed record car was a French car. And you might think that it's a very new technology that you're all going to be driving when you grow up, i.e. electric cars, but it's not. Electric cars are very, very old, and the world's first land speed record was actually an electric car set in 1898 by Count Gaston in France, and it went a staggering 38 miles an hour. Now, of course, we've improved since then. So the one thing that hasn't changed by and large is the rules. So what are those rules? Well, the rules are very, very simple, and it involves some maths, as you imagine it would, because we've got to do some calculations. And there's lots of calculations we need to do, by the way. And the faster we go, the more we need to make sure those calculations are correct. We need to measure the performance of that car. And we do that very simply. We travel through the measured mile in two directions within an hour. So the driver, and it must have a driver, that's one of the rules, has to keep his vehicle in contact with the ground at all times as he travels through that measured mile. And no one else can control that vehicle. It has to be him. It can't be remote controlled. And once he's driven through that measured mile, then the car is then turned round and then has to travel back through the measured mile from the opposite direction, just in case he's on a slope and he's gone whizzy down the hill. Well, he's going to have to go back up the hill. So ideally, you want it as flat as possible. Measured mile twice within an hour. You add the two speeds together by clocking, start, finish, stop the clock, turn around, back again, start the clock, stop it again. And then, of course, we measure an average. We measure it in miles per hour. It could be measured in kilometers an hour. And the record is recorded in both speeds, by the way. So driver has to be in control of the vehicle. The car has to remain in contact with the ground. Oh, and the other rule is it must have 4 wheels. Definition of a car and the land speed record, doesn't matter how you move that car, but it must have 4 wheels. Now, as time has gone by, the rules have stayed the same, but it's become more and more difficult to achieve those rules. As you imagine, the faster you go, your car really wants to get off the ground. It wants to take off. So we're going to need some technology to help us to keep that car on the ground. So we need lots of power, and we need to have a very cool shape to get through that air and also to keep the car on the ground. In the 1960s, there was a fantastic set of cars, and one of those cars was called Bluebird, and Bluebird was a British land speed record, and that car was powered by a jet engine. Now, jet engine normally in aeroplanes, but they decided to put them into cars, which is fairly mad, but that's what they decided to do, and it meant that they could go very fast. By the 1970s, the Americans had introduced a different means of propelling a car, which was to stick a jet in it. Now, so we've got a jet car, and then the Americans decide, oh, well, hang on a minute, a jet's quite good, but I think we should use a rocket. The same rockets that are sticking astronauts into space. Of course, 1969, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Mike Collins are up there on Apollo 11, and they got there through the biggest, most powerful rocket in the world, and that the world has ever seen, the Saturn V rocket. Well, that's no good in a car, but smaller rockets, they decided to stick on a car, and in the 1970s, that's what they were using. And by 1977, there was a man called Richard Noble who decided to bring the land speed record back to the UK where it belongs. So he built a car in his shed, and he tried out different things, and in the end, he had to go with a jet on a car. And well, we'll talk about that in a bit, because what I really want you to understand is that the faster you go, it's really, 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 really important that the surface you run your car on is incredibly flat and also incredibly smooth. Because if it isn't smooth and it isn't flat and your car hits a bump on the road, now you'll all been in a car where the car hits a bump on a road, or maybe it's like one of those sleeping policeman things, and the driver of the car has gone basically too fast and the car jumps. Well, you can't have a car jumping when it's going very, very fast. It might even flip over. So you have to get that surface flat. Now, we're not talking about driving a car over sleeping policemen. We're talking about driving a car over any stone. Now, when Andy Green, who's the current land speed record holder, and we'll talk about him later, decided where is the flattest place on the planet, he decided to do a tour of the world with his then new wife. And they went off all over the world to look for the flattest place. And they found it. It was a place called Hatskeen Pan, Northern Cape Province, South Africa. It's on the southern edge of the Kalahari Desert. It is a dry lake bed. And the wonderful thing about it is that it floods every year. And when that water dries out and the sediment sinks to the bottom, because of gravity, it becomes incredibly flat and smooth. And when they measured how flat and smooth over the 12 miles, which is the track that we need to run Bloodhound, it dropped by just 40 centimeters, making it smoother than a snooker table. It's an amazing story just on its own. How more than 300 people cleared an area equivalent to 2 million square meters to create the smoothest, flattest racetrack on planet Earth. And they hold a world record in their own right. Tell you what, instead of telling you about it, why don't I show you? Get to meet the amazing people that built this super amazing track. Thank you, Mark.
This is one of the most poverty-stricken areas in the province and actually in the country. And this Bloodhound project has brought a lot of economic opportunities. You can see the people who are catering for us today here are people from this area. They are the ones who have been given an opportunity to make a livelihood for them. There are more visitors than has ever been to this fair. So it brought life to an area which was lifeless before.
today is really about all of you, because you did this thing. No one has ever done what you have done. So you should be very, very proud.
You've taken what I think to begin with was a national treasure. You've now turned it from a national treasure into an international treasure. And although Bloodhound will be the first record attempt here, I am certain that it will not be the last. On behalf of the FIA, the Land Speed Records Commission, I'd like to formally welcome you into the international land speed racing community. It's a very large community with a lot of people in it all around the world, and with your efforts, you have now joined it, and I'm proud to welcome you. My hat is off to each and every one.
We've been working under extreme conditions, but it has been a wonderful experience.
We are looking forward to the day the car arrives, looking forward to the day it takes its first trip around here, and the day it breaks the land speed record in my own backyard. Who else can have it but me?
What an amazing story. Just clearing the track. Amazing people, resourceful, resilient, young people, tremendous engineers, people that solve problems every day, even how to find water and how to grow their crops. One of the amazing legacies of Bloodhound is not just about the car, but putting in a pipeline of fresh, clean running water to this sparsely populated desert region of our world. We are so much more connected to people around the world, probably now more so than we've ever, and even through this crisis, this COVID situation, we've been able to with people as I am with you today because of these amazing technologies. Putting in a 4G network around the PAN, and our local South African partners were able to put laptops into schools so these young people could get access to the World Wide Web. And of course, we translated all of our amazing STEM resources into Afrikaans so that they could access it in their own language. So we've got a track. It is a world record in its own right, the smoothest, flattest, straight line racetrack ever built on planet Earth. Having a track is one thing, but of course we need something to drive on that track. Now, people have come up with all kinds of different solutions of how to go very, very fast on the ground. But Bloodhound is the most advanced. It's the most technologically advanced land speed car ever thought of by a human being on the planet. It uses cutting edge technology and state-of-the-art design, and of which Britain leads the world in those technologies. And the engineers from Formula One and aerospace industry have helped to put that car together in the most extraordinary way under the most difficult of circumstances at times. But with grit, determination and perseverance, they have actually put that car together. It's an amazing feat of engineering. When you're traveling along the ground so fast that if you blink, can you blink? If the car ran through Wembley Stadium, as some of you may have watched the FA Cup final there yesterday, if you were there and you blinked, the car would have passed you and you wouldn't have seen it because it's traveling that fast. Who's heard of Usain Bolt? 400-meter running track. Usain Bolt's on his blocks, fastest man on two legs over 100 meters. Bloodhound is at the start of the measure mile run. The gun goes bang. Usain Bolt does one stride. In the length of time it's taken Usain Bolt to do that one stride, Bloodhound has gone all the way around the 400-meter running track and is now 54 meters ahead of him and ahead of the bullet from the gun? Would you like to know a little bit more about how we put this car together and some of the amazing people and facts around it? Well, let me show you. Mark, please.
This is Bloodhound SSC, the most extraordinary and complex racing car ever designed. Built in the UK by a team of Formula One and aerospace experts, it aims to inspire a generation about science and technology and bring the world to a standstill by reaching 1,000 miles per hour, breaking the land speed record. Bloodhound is a battle with physics, a journey into the unknown, a jet from a Typhoon fighter, a rocket hotter than a volcano, huge metal wheels spinning 170 times a second. With the equivalent of 135,000 horsepower, Bloodhound will cover a mile in just 3.6 seconds, faster than a bullet. In 2017, the car will make its first test runs in Newquay, Cornwall, and then we'll be challenging for our first record on the Hackskeen Pan in South Africa's Northern Cape. Here, a team of 300 people have moved over 16,000 tons of rocks by hand to create a smooth 12-mile racecourse on a dry lake bed. Driver Andy Green's first target will be a new record of 800 miles per hour. He'll return again later to push it to 1,000. Followed in 220 countries, we're sharing every detail. Ambassadors are visiting schools, and children are setting up science clubs and taking part in the Model Rocket Car Challenge. Be part of our incredible groundbreaking adventure. Start by following the action every day online. Bloodhound is coming.
Now, getting a jet from a Eurofighter Typhoon is not the easiest thing in the world to do. But Andy Green was a fighter pilot in the Royal Air Force. He was a squadron leader when he set that land speed record back in 1992 of 763 miles an hour. But Richard Noble wanted to go faster, to push it beyond any boundary. It's a bit like if no one had ever climbed Everest, let's push and climb it. Let's go to the moon. Let's go beyond the moon. It's about pushing those boundaries. And I know personally 2 of the 4 people that have driven faster than 600 miles an hour on the ground. Amazing, amazing people. So we needed a jet engine from a Eurofighter, and the only way you can do that is to get one from the Ministry of Defence. So Andy Green, Richard Noble, and Ron Ayres, the man who designed that amazing Bloodhound car, and Thrust SC, the world's first supersonic car, went to talk to the Minister of Defence and asked him if they could borrow the amazing Rolls-Royce jet engine that's in the Eurofighter. And to cut a long story short, Lord Drayson, who holds an electric car record in his own right, agreed. But he agreed under a condition, and the condition was, you need to use this project to inspire a generation to take up science, technology and engineering jobs, because a report had come out and it said we are running out of engineers. Now, it may be a chilling statistic, but the truth is that there are currently more engineering vacancies than there are currently people unemployed in the UK. So there are amazing opportunities, whether that's in the health sector, who knows, you might actually be using your amazing, creative, curious skills to solve problems that we need solutions to. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I think COVID is quite a serious issue that we need solutions to those problems. We need solutions to energy, our consumption of energy, for housing, for feeding the population. These problems will be solved by engineers, and some of the technology in Bloodhound showcases that technology. 3D printing, for example, the tip of the nose cone has been 3D printed out of titanium metal. Now, you may have seen 3D printers printing little plastic things in the classroom, but you can print using all kinds of different materials and different resources, such as carbon, even chocolate can be 3D printed. Now, we haven't got anything made of chocolate on the car. Maybe it might be a good idea. No, it would be a bad idea. I don't even know why I suggested it, but you can 3D print chocolate. And there are all kinds of other things like carbon fiber components on the car because it's incredibly light and incredibly strong. The person that designed the bicycles for the Rio Olympic team, and of course they were all gold medalists, also designed the carbon fiber sections, the air brake doors that helped to slow the car down, Bloodhound itself, a man called George Morris. So these are the kinds of people that do amazing and extraordinary things. And by the way, you could be one of them. Yes, you could. Be curious and ask questions. Find out, why is that? How does that work? Have a go and try. When I interviewed all of the engineers on the project and I asked them, what were you doing when you were 10 or 11 years old? Guess what they said? They were all outside and they were all making things or taking things apart and finding out how they worked. And scouting is a fantastic opportunity to do those types of things. Now, I know that some of your leaders out there are having to put together what's called risk assessments. And I had to put risk assessments together for Bloodhound because one of the jobs that I had within Bloodhound was actually looking after the health and safety of the team. So I think you've got it easy if you're a scout group leader. Have you ever had to do a risk assessment where you needed to actually determine that there are two types of snakes, dangerous and very dangerous? And if you get bitten by a dangerous snake, it will feel like a gunshot wound, but you'll be fine and survive. If you get bitten by a very dangerous snake and you don't get an antivenom within 15 minutes, you'll die. And I had to put that into the risk assessment for the team when they went to the Kalahari Desert just last autumn in October of 2019 to high-speed test this car. I got to meet some of the wonderful young people from the Maya community from the Kalahari Desert when Bloodhound actually got round to being tested. And Andy Green, the most extraordinary mathematician in the world is how he describes himself, fastest mathematician on the planet, tested Bloodhound for the very first time in Newquay in Cornwall in 2017. It was a low speed testing. It was only going 210 miles an hour, 0 to 200 miles an hour in just 6 seconds, which is low speed testing for Bloodhound. But Andy had to have split second decision. He had to make the right choice at the right time. Even the color of the cockpit, and you saw the cockpit in that video, is simply designed the way Andy wanted it designed. He had 3 functioning screens giving him all kinds of really important information. And the actual screen that he looked out of when he drives the car, because of the angle of the windscreen, is like looking through a letterbox, traveling at extraordinary speeds, having to make split-second decisions, which could be absolutely critical to the performance of the car and, of course, its safety. Even the seat is molded to fit Andy Green. Now, I don't know, maybe if some of you are into Formula One, you may have heard of Formula One. It's not a health food drink. And of course, the British Grand Prix is going on right as we speak. If little Lewis Hamilton in his go-kart hasn't won already. But the point being is that the steering wheels are custom made for the driver. And even on Bloodhound, the steering wheel was custom made for Andy Green. The steering wheel on Bloodhound, made out of titanium metal, 3D printed, only fits Andy's hands. The buttons and the triggers are the way he wanted it. The toggle switches and the dials and buttons are all the way he wanted it. If you want to find out more about that, and also more about some of the other extraordinary things to do with Bloodhound, then go on our YouTube channel, Bloodhound Education, and also, of course, our Facebook, Bloodhound Education, and Twitter feed as well, and of course our amazing website, bloodhoundeducation.com. And you can find out loads of very, very cool facts and lots of fun science activities to do as well there. So we talked a little bit about the track, we've talked a little bit about the car, and we talked a little bit about the driver. Now, it's all well and good you designing something, and we run workshops at the Bloodhound Education Centre, and we're running them over the summer, and you can go to the website and find out about that. And designing is one thing, but the other thing that you must do to prove your design is you need to test it, because a computer screen, which is what you're looking at now, gives a beautiful impression and a beautiful image, and you might have made a beautiful design, but once you fabricate it and you make it into a physical thing, you then have to test it in the real world. You have to take it outside where there are external factors like the weather, like the wind, like the surface, and the temperature. All of those things will impact on your design. No different with Bloodhound. Bloodhound, when we low speed tested, we hoped that we would get someone to invest in the project. And sadly, in 2017, that didn't happen. And by 2018, the car in effect was shut down and was within a week of being broken up and scrapped because no one had bought the car. But the good news was that an article was read in a magazine by a young man, maybe like one of you, who read this and went back to his dad and said, "Dad, you need to buy the car." Now that's, of course, an amazing thing. But why did he want to buy the car? And the reason he wanted to buy the car is his dad, along with his brother and his mum, had come along to the Big Bang science show that's held at the NEC every year. And Bloodhound are there every year, as we would have been at Silverstone right now in the family zone. And we were running rocket cars indoors at the NEC, and we had one of the cars, the show cars, full-scale models that we have to show people this amazing technology. And this family got inspired by Bloodhound because of Bloodhound education activity that we were doing there. And they decided to be a follower of the project. So when that young lad went home to talk to his dad, a man by the name of Ian Warhurst, Ian agreed that we couldn't let this car go to scrap. We had to invest in this car to get it to achieve what it was designed to do. And that was to continue to inspire people like you. Just as engineers got inspired when the Apollo program, what was called the Apollo effect, where many people got into science and technology and engineering because of seeing the amazing things that people were doing in space. And by the way, aren't they doing amazing things right now with SpaceX and Dragon rocket on its way back to Earth, and what's going on in the International Space Station, and the fact we're going to build another base, we're going to build a base on the moon, and we're going to live on the moon and eventually go to Mars. These technologies are actually being tested in Bloodhound. You saw the rocket test on the video earlier, and the company that are developing the rocket are the same rocket that will European satellites into space. But when Bloodhound was going to be broken up, it would never achieve any of that. And Ian said, we can't let that happen. He got a small team together, and I was involved in terms of supporting that team from a health and safety point of view. And they got the car finished. And last October, they took that car down to South Africa. And for the first time in the 12 years this project has been running, the solid aluminium wheels touched down on the Kalahari Desert for the very first time. Some days they achieved what they wanted to achieve. Sometimes it didn't work. And that's engineering. It doesn't always work. And you learn from those mistakes. And all of the people that were involved are used to those situations. It may not be in the Kalahari Desert. It could be in the UK. But they were learning all the time as the car was actually performing in the desert. And eventually, on the 16th of November, 2019, the final run of the car, scheduled in the morning, Andy Green took Bloodhound faster than it had ever gone, just under the power of the world's most efficient power-to-weight ratio jet engine. ton and produces 9 tons of thrust. And we captured that moment in real time on a video. Now we're going to show you a video of that run, and you'll see in the bottom right hand corner, with all of the noise, all of the sounds of the comms going on, the communication between traffic control and Jess up there in the box with Martin, and talking to Andy in the car, and all of that in real time. And there is a speedo. It's a very cool speedo on Bloodhound. It's the only speeder I know that actually goes up to 1,100 miles an hour in a car. But I'd like to show you that run. Go ahead, Mark.
And convoy control, approved transit, track gate, northern corridor, start point and report in position.
Driver is now in Bloodhound. Over.
Convoy control, good morning. Temperature is +25 and pressure 921 millivolts.
Last time, it's 180 now. Good shoot. Everybody's going off the end today. Distance 2.2, 350. What's the target next time, boy? 300, start life 250. 250. 45, hold it. 2 miles to go. Engine's good. Good. Oh, I've got tons of distance. We're going to stop 2 kilometres short, near enough. Control, Bloodhound, stopped.
Control engine confirm, all is bloody good, and we're just celebrating for a few minutes. Over.
For that. Smashed it. It's a bit of a surprise. We're intentional, mate. Doesn't matter. Pictures, man. Well done, buddy. 628. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely delighted. Our first 600 mile an hour run. Personally, I'm just a tiny bit miffed. My job is to control the car as precisely as possible, so I was trying to target about 605 just to make sure we got the 6 number. We actually finished up with 628 miles an hour. That is actually outside my control. When I lifted off the throttle, the way the jet engine winds down changes with speed, and it gave us more power for about another half second, and that put the extra speed on, finished up another kilometre further down the track. So that's the the major learning point above 600 is the jet engine performance changes. We'll put that in the plan for next year. All of that said, we came here to try and get ultimately squeak it up to 600 miles an hour. We achieved that comfortably today, and as a real stretch target, could we reach 1,000 kilometres an hour? We are just shy of 1,011 kilometres an hour on today's run as a peak speed. That is a good result to go home with.
We set out today to do 600 and we smashed it. We did 628. That's 1,010 kilometers an hour. and that's us done. That's mission accomplished. That's everything we set out to do in South Africa. So it's that weird moment of it's been achieved. Now we've pushed this car exactly where we needed to go. We've got all the data and job done.
It's just phenomenal feeling, and I think it's also relief. We've had some low times, and this is just a massive high. We've come out here to achieve what we want to achieve. We've excelled there, and we're now buzzing, and this car is absolutely ready for land speed record speeds.
We're all looking around now, trying to work out what to do next. The reality is we've achieved our goal. We've got here, you know, and you don't run unnecessarily. So we've got what we want. We're going to check the aero data off the car, and if the aero data off the car is all good, then that's a wrap. You know, we're done. Our work here is done for this year. We're going to take the car back to home to the SGS in Gloucestershire, and start looking at the next side of the project. So yeah, really great news. Absolutely over the moon. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks for your support. It's been really great to have everybody with us on social media, following us along. The whole team have loved that. We've been such good feeling from it all. So yeah, we're all really, really pleased. So I'm glad we could provide some entertainment.
And 10 kilometers.
Thunderbolt departing the fantastic hack skiing pan for the last time this deployment.
So there we are. What an amazing achievement by the team. So we've done low speed testing. The car worked. We've done high speed testing, and high speed testing was to test the aerodynamics of the car. It was to test the computer models that had been done, which is simply trying to solve pressure equations. So this is very old maths. This is 19th century maths being used with 21st century technology to create computer models. But we had to prove the model, which is what we've been talking about. You had to prove the model in the real world. So we took the car there and tested it, tested to see whether the airflow over the car would perform exactly the same way as the computer model. And unfortunately, if you were going to use this as a thesis for an engineering degree, the people who were checking your thesis would think you were lying. Why? Because the computer model and the actual performance were exactly the same. No deviation at all. So the actual performance of the car achieved better than could have been expected, and therefore the car is ready for a land speed record, and we know it can now happen with this car. It's perfectly designed to achieve even higher speeds. Faster you go, the more energy you need. Now the next phase would be then, it's now back in the UK, just in the building next door to the Bloodhound Education Centre. And if you're very fortunate, sometimes we show you around as well, because I've got a pass, so that way. So you can see there, that's my pass to get into the building, so I can actually show people this amazing piece of technology. Is working on the rocket side of the program. So we've tested the jet. It's a hybrid car, so there's two means of propulsion in this car, and the other is the rocket system. Now, I have to tell you this because people don't get it, is that this will be the most environmentally friendly land speed car in the modern era. I'm going to say that again. This will be the most environmentally friendly land speed car of the modern era, because when the car goes back to set a land speed record, the jet engine will be running on biofuel. This is the kind of fuel that will be run in jet engines in the future, and we're showcasing and testing it in the car. Also as well, the rocket system we use is a monorocket, and the emissions from a monorocket is basically steam and oxygen. It's simply, you take hair bleach, hydrogen peroxide, H2O2. H2O is water, O is oxygen, and you force it through a catalyst pad, and all that does is just speed up a reaction, and you split it into H2O and O. But when H2O is under pressure, it becomes steam, and oxygen, as it expands, also produces lots of energy. So the steam and the oxygen are coming out the back, zero emissions. And of course, the camp around the desert the most amazing resource, of course, is the sun. It's on the southern edge of the Kalahari. The vehicles around will be electric vehicles, and all the facilities on the pan for the desert camp will be powered by the sun, solar panels. So it becomes an amazing environmentally friendly project as well. A lot of people don't understand that, don't understand how this is carbon neutral because of the amount of trees we plant, and also as well don't understand that we leave that desert actually in a better condition than when we find it, because sometimes other people go on the desert. So it was left in pristine condition, and it will be when the car goes back again. Now, we've had some questions come in. By all means, send some more. We've got a bit of time, and I'd like to see if I can tackle some of those questions. Great questions, by the way. So the first question up is from Ruth. How do you pick the person to drive a record attempting car? A great question, Ruth. How do you pick them? Well, initially for Thrust SSC, the current land speed record car, the way Richard Noble selected the driver, which ended up as Andy Green, was they advertised. They literally advertised, paper, put an ad in the paper, wanted, mad person, break the sound barrier on the ground, apply within, something like that. And they got applicants. Now, some of those applicants, I have to tell you, were as mad as cheese. I mean, really bonkers. Like, oh yeah, I can do that. Just bonkers. But there were some sensible ones, and the sensible ones were the people that had already gone faster than the speed of sound. And of course, those people were fighter pilots, of which Andy Green was one. And at the time, he was a squadron leader in the Royal Air Force, and now he's wing commander. He's kind of semi-retired as ambassador now in the Royal Air Force, but that's his rank, wing commander. So those split-second decision-making, people that can withstand the high G pressure, that gravity force that pushes against you when you accelerate and pulls against you when you decelerate, we need to have people that can understand that and can manage that and can work through it and not lose consciousness. Because if you're experiencing high gravity on you, and you're not used to that, 2.5 gravity, 2.5 your weight pushing against you, potentially you can throw up, go temporarily blind, or pass out altogether. Now, Andy Green doesn't have those options. He has to keep that car going in a straight line. So that's why he is immensely qualified for the job. Also, he is now the only person that fits that car. You don't go to a garage and buy a land speed record car. They are custom made. And this car, the steering wheel fits his hands, the feet pedals are exactly the distance from the seat, and the seat is made out of carbon fiber, and it's molded into the shape of Andy Green. So if you've never seen Andy Green and you see the car, you know how big his hands are and how big his bottom is. So there we are. So great question, Ruth. Thank you. So what makes the Bloodhound so fast? From Addy and Jer. So another fantastic question. And what makes it so fast is the amount of energy that's being blown out the back. So this is what's called a thrust powered car. It doesn't have drive wheels like your car. It's literally blowing energy, hot gas out the back of nozzles coming out the back of the car. So there'll be the jet nozzle, and also, which you saw at the end of the video, when Stuart Edmondson and Mark Chapman were talking to the video, they were stood in front of the car, and you could see the nozzle, the jet nozzle. I'm doing this not because it's like an octopus impression, but the nozzle can be expanded and contracted. You can open and close that nozzle to force more or less of the energy, so you can adjust it. And then below the jet will be a mono rocket, and between them they produce more energy than 30 Formula One grids of cars. More energy than 30 Formula One grids of cars. That's a lot of energy. The Queen Elizabeth II aircraft carrier down at Portsmouth, Southampton, new class of aircraft carrier, holds thousands of crew, and jet aircraft actually only has 500 horsepower more energy than Bloodhound. It is incredible energy, but you need massive amounts of energy, because the faster you go, the thicker the air becomes, the more difficult it is to get through that air. If you're going up, it's really hard. When you're on the ground, it's even harder. And if Bloodhound ever gets to go, for example, 1,000 miles an hour, it would actually break the airspeed record, low altitude airspeed record, as well as the land speed record. So again, that's a very good question. Good question from Harry here is, do you think the record will ever be beaten? Well, yeah, obviously. I don't think anyone's going to beat this car's record, because I don't think that they're in the climate, and I don't necessarily mean, you know, the climate, but the political climate in the world. I'm not sure that people are really wanting to think and focus on land speed. But saying that, people are now getting interested in space, because the technology in Bloodhound and the technology to develop spacecraft, etc., all of those technologies feed into everyday life. For example, Velcro, aerospace invention by an engineer. Teflon, that coating on frying pans, it's an aerospace invention. It's to stop hot liquid sticking to metal, to do with rockets and spacecraft. And there's all kinds of computer technology that has been developed because of space and the kind of thing that we're doing with Bloodhound. For example, computational fluid dynamics. Sounds mad, but that's the computer model that Bloodhound is built using. And that technology not only designed Bloodhound, but actually designed my car. And I don't have no fancy car, although I like it. It's just a Ford Focus. But a Ford Focus is now designed using the same computer technology as Bloodhound. And they use that technology to design airplanes. Why? Because it makes the shapes more efficient. If the shape's more efficient, it uses less fuel. And of course, we need to make sure that our fuel consumption is less. Does my car run more efficiently than the last one I had? Yes. Better materials, car's made of aluminium, it's lighter, like Bloodhound, carbon fiber, aluminium on the car, lighter materials, but the car is a better shape, so it doesn't need as much energy as Thrust SSC, for example, which is a great big car, very, very heavy, but would never go anywhere as fast as Bloodhound. So again, very good question. Thank you very much, Harry. An anonymous question, is Andy Green the best driver in the world? Well, depends on what you mean by best driver. Straight line driver? Absolutely. Going around corners? No. Why? Well, saying that, Bloodhound does have a 250-meter turning circle, but driving normal sports cars, not great. How do I know that? Well, there is a fantastic example of Andy Green driving a performance car at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, and he actually drove that car into the wall, but we don't like to talk about it. We don't like to talk about it. Anyway, so straight line driver, absolutely. Best driver in the world? Don't know. It's a very good question. That little Lewis Hamilton in his go-kart, he's doing quite well, isn't he? Well, you know, compared to Bloodhound. So here's a one from Zach. How was the car transported to Africa? Well, it went in an airplane. And I know it sounds really weird, but I took a picture of this. They literally wrapped the car up in cling film and attached it to 2 pallets. They then winched it up and put it in a truck and put it down in the truck. The truck then drove to the airport. They took it out and they put it into a cargo plane. And it literally took up the space of 2 cargo plane pallets, which are quite big pallets, by the way, because the car is the length of a double-decker bus. It's just under 14 meters long, and that's how it got there. And then when they landed it in South Africa, they then did the same in reverse, put it on a truck and drove it to Hatskeen Pan. But again, very good question. Here's another one. What happens to the cars after they are finished with? Didn't one end up in a lake? Well, now I think what you're getting confused with there, whoever asked that question, is one of the Malcolm Dynasty land speed and also water speed record was a tragedy where the boat flipped, and that was at Lake, was it Windermere, I think, or Coniston, not sure, one of the two, and that was a water speed record that ended up in the water, not a land speed car. But the car, when it achieves this, the record, will end up probably in a museum. The current land speed record, Thrust SSC, and its predecessor, Thrust 2, are both free to go and see at Coventry Transport Museum in Coventry. and they have a hall there. It's a transport museum full of all kinds of really amazing stuff. And they actually have a model, a scale 1-to-1 model of Bloodhound, which is another world record in its own right. It's made up of 380,000 units of connects. It's the world's largest connect structure, and it's a full-scale model of Bloodhound. So maybe they're keen to get it to fill that space when it achieves its goals. Question here from Dex: how long did it take to build the car? How long did it take to build the car? Well, that's a really good question. So the project's 12 years. It took best part of 6 years to design the car. And this is, most people don't see this. So if you're working for NASA, or you're working for Rolls-Royce, or you're working for Jaguar Land Rover, or you're working for Mercedes Formula One, you will not see their designs because they're not allowed to show you, because other people might, get their idea. With Bloodhound, all of our homework is available for everyone to see. So when it's worked, we've shown people. When it doesn't work, we've shown people. And so it took a very, very long time to design and get the correct design. We couldn't make a model and run the car in a wind tunnel on a rolling road, because there's no rolling road in a wind tunnel that goes fast enough, for example. So that wouldn't work. So it had to be all done on a computer, and it went through 14 different major changes, several hundred minor changes before it actually got built. And it took about, give or take, I would say it took about 3.5 to 4 years to build, but they'd have to modify the car again in order to get the car to go to South Africa to set a land speed record because of the rocket system. And also they're going to put an electric motor, which will simply be to power the pump for putting the hair bleach, 887 litres of it, into the rocket. So yeah, there's some modifications still to do. Have I ever sat in Bloodhound? I couldn't possibly tell you. But if I did sit in Bloodhound, I can't see over the windscreen because Andy Green is a lot taller than me, and I can't get my feet on the pedals. Not, but I can't possibly say that I've ever sat in the car. But it's really cool. Shh, don't tell anyone. Good. What are the other cars on your poster? So there is a poster here. And this is part of one of the engineering challenge sheets that we do. And these are some of the kind of the previous cars, and also some of the current competitors on there as well. There was a car in New Zealand, jet black, never got finished. Silver Bullet, which was an Australian car, that equally never got finished. And there's a few others on here as well. And unfortunately, some of them crashed, sadly. There is one on here, though, that is still a competitor and is still in the race. Roscoe McLachlan from Australia is building a rocket car. It's just a rocket car, no jet, just a rocket. And of course, there are very flat places in Australia. And his car is called Aussie Invader 5. Don't ask me what happened to the other 4. No idea. He doesn't like to talk about that. But yeah, Aussie Invader 5, and that is a genuine competitor. And he's a friend of the project. And you're going, what do you mean a friend of a project? When you're doing this, there's very few people in the Land Speed Club, so you need to share your homework. Now, of course, you need the technology to be able to take advantage of that. But we all work together and share ideas, because it's good to share ideas so that we can all learn. Different people will take that information in different ways. We think a jet and a rocket power car is the best answer to the problem of how to go faster than anyone else on the planet on the ground. Good. So just a quick shout out, if anyone else, we've got a little slot if anybody else wants to ask any final questions before I do a wrap up. You've just got a few seconds left if you want to get a quick question in to me. Obviously, when we do our workshops down at the Education Centre, bit of a quick plug, Bloodhound Family Experiences, if you know anybody that would like to come along, we're based in Gloucester, just off the M5. And we're running family experiences over the summer holiday, all over August, and you can book and come along and bring your family with with you and take part in some of our amazing workshops. Follow us online, bloodhoundeducation.com, and also bloodhound_edu if you're on Twitter, etc., etc., etc. Great YouTube channel with lots of resources. And I know some of you out there have actually used some of our education stuff, our learning resources, lots of cool things to do at home, all around helping you to understand some of the science around building a land speed record car. Is not just good for land speed, it's good for the world. So the technology and the curiosity and the questioning and the maths and the science is infinitely adaptable. I'm going to end just with a very quick story before you need to go to your closing ceremony, which I know is very cool apparently, so stay tuned for that. Just a quick story. One of the workshops we run is rocket cars. So we literally get kids to make little rocket cars, stick a pyrotechnic in the back, and then whiz them down a playground or a tennis court or whatever, and just go really, really fast. One school got really, really enthusiastic about this and thought it was such a good thing to do. And so they went to Guinness, the Guinness World Record people, and said, what is the current land speed record for a model rocket? There is not one. No one has ever set one. So instead of giving up and not having a go, oh well, whatever, they said, okay, what do we need to do to set a record? And the people at Guinness said, well, there's all kinds of things you need to do, the rules and all the rest of it. So they set the rules and they decided to set a model rocket car record. And they did, and they set the world's first model rocket car record at 88 miles an hour, which is pretty fast, 88 miles an hour. Another school got to hear about this, took it even faster, 124 miles an hour. And then the first school got very passionate about this. You can see videos on our YouTube channel, by the way, of their run, 224 miles an hour. But that wasn't enough. Some schools even got their teachers to set a land speed record, and they decided to get their own rocket license so they can make their own rockets and put those rockets in the back. And they got the car to 224, and eventually they took their car to just over 500 miles an hour. But the most amazing thing was that the kids in the first club all went on to do science and engineering degrees, and one of the young people is currently working on a model rocket car themselves that they think will actually go faster than the speed of sound. A model rocket car going faster than 750 miles an hour on the ground. So there we are. I hope that's a little bit of inspiration for you, that anything and everything is possible. So keep being curious, keep asking questions, find out, have a go. If you're thinking about being an engineer, have a go. And it's been my absolute joy to be able to share just a little bit of the Bloodhound story with you. Have a great weekend, and please, please go away and change the world. Thank you for watching.